This is the New Balance 1080 version 11. Out of the box, this shoe was a springy, cushioned daily trainer that was comfortable in the forefoot, yet a little bit sloppy in the heel. How much of that has changed over the last 100 miles? It's time to lace these shoes up one more time and take them for a run. .32 miles, 8 minutes 54 seconds per mile, and 718 feet of gain getting for a run out here in New Vienna, and picking up a couple of old friends along the way. These are a couple of farm dogs that live on farms along this route that tend to follow me anytime that I run by. I try to get them to stay at their respective farms, but nothing that I do will get them to stay. So at this point, after a lot of running along this route last year, I just kind of let them come along. They're very smart dogs. They're very well trained. Anytime a car comes by, they immediately jump off of the road and get into the ditch or further in towards the fields and kind of wait and hide until the cars pass, and then they come back out and start following me again. So it's kind of nice to have some company out here on these roads, and also take the New Balance 1080 version 11 to the 100-mile mark with today's run. Now, before I give my thoughts on how the shoes held up over time, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that I purchased myself. No one sent it to me. No one's paying me to make this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the New Balance 1080 version 11. Let's start with some specs on the shoe first. It's a 30 millimeter stack height shoe with an 8 millimeter drop. That means there's 22 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. And in this shoe, the midsole foam is Fresh Foam X, which is a bouncy and springy material that New Balance has been using in a lot of their shoes for a couple of years now. And personally, I think that's a good thing because I do really enjoy running on this material. I think it's a rubberized foam. It is a compound that can be run directly on, even though on the outsole of this shoe, there is an ample amount of rubber coverage. I believe this is blown rubber, separated into pods with flex grooves cut into it, so that way the shoe is a little bit more flexible as your foot hits the ground. On the upper of this shoe, there is a knit material in the forefoot, and I just absolutely love this material that's here in the forefoot. Very breathable, super comfortable, nice and stretchy, gives my toes plenty of space to work in here, but yet strong enough to keep my foot held into place. I love this material so much that I wish basically that the rest of the shoe kind of had it as well, but you really only have it in this toe box, in this vamp area. Once you get towards the midfoot where the laces are, you have a less breathable material. It's a lot stiffer to give some support in terms of the lacing system. And then as you get further back, then you get to this very strange looking structure that ends in a aggressive Achilles flare. It seems like it's a neoprene type of material that's encapsulating a very substantial and very rigid heel cup that's back here. All told, this entire package comes out at a relatively lightweight of 9.3 ounces. So now that we've talked about what this shoe is on paper, let's talk about what it's been like to run with this shoe over the last 100 miles. And the way that I'll break it up is I'm going to talk about how I've been using this shoe and how I've kind of inserted it into my rotation of shoes. Then we'll get to the wear and tear, talk about the midsole, the upper, and then the outsole wear as well. So let's talk about how I've been using it. I mentioned at the top of the video that it's a cushioned daily trainer. So there's kind of daily trainers, the shoes that you can use kind of for everything, the kind of just general running shoes. This fits in that category, but it's a little bit more on the cushion side. I wouldn't say, at least not anymore, it's not as cushioned as like a max cushion shoe might be, but it's not quite so light to be in the kind of general daily trainer category. And it's certainly not light enough or performance tuned enough to be kind of in the speed shoe category either. So it's a daily trainer with a little bit more cushion. That's kind of how I perceive this shoe because it's got so much stack height underfoot. So I've been taking it for most of my runs, whether it's an easy run, moderate distance, longer distance, all of those where I'm in easy to kind of moderate paces. That's where I've been really enjoying this shoe because it just lets you put in the miles. You don't have to think too much about the shoe, and it's just a comfortable experience that I've been, for the most part, really enjoying. There's a couple of areas where I don't like the shoe, which were a little bit of a surprise, and some areas that I kind of expected. I didn't expect for this shoe to be a speed shoe, especially from my experience with last year's 1088 version 10. The area that was a bit of a surprise for me with this shoe for the version 11 is that I didn't love it as a recovery shoe. For those days after your long run, if you're going for a run, trying to get some active recovery in, maybe your feet are a little bit banged up from the long run from the day before and you want something that's really going to pamper your feet. I'm not getting that from this shoe anymore, although I did feel like I got that from the version 10. The 1080 version 11 just seems a little bit more kind of daily trainer oriented, so it's not giving me that like recovery shoe love that I'm looking for when I really need something that's extra accommodating. But even if you take out some of the speed work and if you take out the recovery runs, it still leaves a majority of the type of runs that I do, which are kind of easy, relaxed pace, whether it's from anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half to 2 hours of running. I feel like this shoe can definitely handle it, whether you're running an easy pace all the way up to about marathon pace is kind of where I feel like the sweet spot is for this shoe. So if you think about it, that's a pretty big sweet spot for the shoe. So next, let's talk about how the midsole has been holding up. I still feel like it's a very springy shoe. I still feel like it's a very cushioned shoe. It doesn't feel like it's a foam that's degrading or feel like that it's changed that much over time. I still feel like I'm getting a very pleasant softness to the shoe, but also a nice bounce to it as well. The one thing that I've noticed over time is that the shoe seems to be, and I don't know if this is the way the shoe always does, or this is something that I've kind of realized that this is where the shoe wants to be, is that the shoe doesn't love my forefoot strike, it seems. It really seems to be encouraging for me to have more of a midfoot strike. And the way that I'm noticing that is, at least on my right foot, right here at like the pads of my feet, where I tend to land when I'm doing my more of a forefoot strike, on the right foot, it feels like it's a little bit uncomfortable, as if there isn't enough cushion or stack height underneath the foot here, like I'm bottoming out. And sometimes after a longer run, I kind of started to feel a bit of a pain or discomfort underneath the balls of my feet by the end of the run. And so that's something that I realized, that if I move back a little bit in my foot strike and kind of try to land more in the midfoot or even closer towards the heel, then I'm getting to use some of this giant heel back here where there's a lot of that Fresh Foam X midsole foam. And that really makes it a lot more comfortable of a shoe for me to run in terms of my specific foot strike. So that's the one thing that I've noticed, is that it doesn't seem to love the forefoot strike. Next, let's talk about the upper. The upper has, for better and worse, hasn't changed at all. It looks absolutely pristine. There's nothing that seems to be wearing. It's hard for me to tell from the look of the upper that this is a 100-mile shoe. The black color also helps kind of hide any of the kind of normal wear and tear in terms of discoloration that you might see in the upper. So it looks pretty much like a brand new shoe to me, at least from the upper's perspective. Nothing has really changed. The knit material in the forefoot is still super comfortable and one of my favorite materials that I've run in this year in 2021 in terms of just how nice this material is. And the Ultra heel in the back still feels pretty sloppy. Now, I keep thinking that this is going to be a real precision fit with the way that this sculpted and curls around, and it's going to lock in the heel, and it seems like there's just a lot of attention paid to this heel. But for me, I just never felt like my heel was ever perfectly seated inside this Ultra heel, and so there are times where I kind of don't notice it, and that's kind of like the best, is when I don't notice anything good or bad from it. But there are times, and they're periodic, where it just feels like my heel is going to slip out from the back of the shoe, and there's just something about it where I'm just not getting enough kind of like lockdown in the heel. That's something that hasn't changed over the 100 miles either. Now let's talk about the outsole on the rubber. I feel like the outsole rubber here is wearing down. I can certainly see certain areas that are experiencing a lot of wear on the treads, and that's going to be in my highest wear areas right here on the back right side of the shoe towards like kind of the front of the heel. I can definitely see some wear there. And then on the right foot, I'm seeing a lot of wear on some of these little pods right on the balls of my feet, the areas where I'm starting to feel a little bit of discomfort after some of those longer miles, but not more than I would expect for a 100-mile shoe. And as is typical for a lot of the shoes that I wear, there's similar wear patterns on the left foot, but none of it is as kind of severe as the wear patterns are on the right foot. But I'm seeing it again in those high traffic areas for me, which are down here right in front of the heel on the outer side, and then again towards the balls of the feet. All this wear seems about average for what I would normally expect for a 100-mile shoe. So I don't think anything's wearing quickly. The exposed foam that's there is also seeing a couple of scuffs here and there, but nothing about that. It looks like it's torn up or chewed up at all. Everything looks great, and it is holding up about as well as I would expect. So overall, the 1080 version 11 has been holding up really well. It's still a springy cushion daily trainer that I know a lot of you have been really loving. But for me, because of the issue that I've been experiencing in the forefoot, where it just doesn't seem like there's quite enough of that Fresh Foam X there for me, and because of the kind of weird sloppiness that's in that Ultra heel, it's a shoe that I just became less and less excited about as the miles racked up. Let me know what you guys think if you've been running in this, or if you have any questions about the shoe, feel free to put them down in the comments down below. Or better yet, feel free to stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. And I'd love to be able to talk to you guys about the shoes there. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, what's going on?